All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar for this evening. My name is Kim Levinsky, owner and race director for Sasquatch Trail Runners out in New Jersey and New York. We put on events, we call them trail parties throughout northern New Jersey and the Hudson Highlands of New York, ranging anywhere from kids 1 mile races all the way up to 100 miles and a 36-hour fixed time event. So we've got something for everybody. We've got events basically once every month throughout the entire calendar year. So this is part of our webinar series where we bring in really rad individuals to come and chat with us about fun topics. And tonight we're talking about perimenopause nutrition 101. And we're joined by probably one of my favorite people on this planet, Dina Griffin. What's up, Dina?
Hey, Kim, thank you so much for having me participate for this evening and this fascinating area of health and women's health. I'm super excited to be back with you and chat on this topic.
I love it. I love it. So Dina is no stranger to Sasquatch land. She's been around a few years now. She has even come out to New Jersey for Sasquatch event, a couple of them now. So she was at Wild Goose Trail Festival last year, and she was here this past spring for the Long Path premiere that was in May. And so, Dina, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, and then we can jump into the topic of this evening.
Cool. Yeah. Well, real quick, I'm in Colorado, and my field of specialty in terms of my career and the work that I do is really using food and nutrition to improve people's lives, health, athletic performance, lifespan, health span. So, as a dietitian and a sports dietitian, my kind of area of focus here again is just like how can each of us use food to our advantage and really work with our own health goals. I mean, ultimately, I just want to help people feel better and be able to do the things that we want to do in life. And luckily, food plays a big role in those outcomes. So, my business is the Nutrition Mechanic. And I guess one of those other areas I like to spend my time is working with women, in particular, the like 35 and older crowd, but I'm truly all women and those who identify as women. So using food to support all of our goals. And so that's what I do through my business.
Awesome. And you neglected to mention that you're also an accomplished badass athlete yourself, which is definitely worth mentioning.
I don't know about all those words put together.
Yes, come on, boss lady.
I definitely enjoy, running, hiking, and being on the trails as part of my other side of life. So it's great to be able to talk with the Sasquatters and your followers, Kim, because we have such an array of individuals and abilities, and all of us have different things going on. And so I think it's cool to bring us together for the kind of webinars you've been hosting over the last few years, just to explore all of the areas that we can tap into to ultimately make us better humans, I think.
Totally. Yeah. And it's about time we're doing a chat on perimenopause. Earlier this year we had Dr. Colleen Drehos, who she was on, she's a pelvic floor PT, and she spoke on perimenopause and pelvic floors, which that was a really cool chat. I know you got to listen to it as well. So this is fun to be able to come at another aspect of the perimenopause topic.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that, like 51% of the planet go through. So,
Yes.
yeah, the more we can talk about it, just like the pelvic floor. I mean, when I when I was young, that just was never a word I heard ever. And so, like, it's never too late to learn about our bodies and do treatments. And, what can I do to make sure that I'm um, protected or just feeling like I'm not falling apart as I age. And so I think perimenopause, because it's another area that affects all of us and all of us women and can be quite a shift in transition time. There's so much to learn, but being able to talk about it and share with one another is gold.
Totally. Yeah. And I know that's not the case for everybody. Like not everybody has maybe that space within their friend circle where people are openly talking about it. I mean, me personally, most of my friends are in the perimenopause age bracket. So, and they're very vocal about it. So I'm getting a kind of a front row seat about what's to come for myself because I'm a little before that age gap there. But yeah, Dina, I was thinking, I know you've got your presentation that we're going to jump into, but what I always love to do with webinars with topics when we're, if it's focusing on one specific topic is to just give like, what is perimenopause in a very succinct answer. Then we can like kind of explore it because, with Sasquatch, we have so many newbies that come around. So maybe for folks who are haven't heard of it or don't know much about it, what would you say if you had to like give the Cliff Notes version of what is perimenopause? And then we can jump into all the details.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's a transition time in life traditionally defined by our reproductive stage. Like, are you fertile or not? Or are you becoming less fertile? These days, we've kind of moved past like identifying women as being in a reproductive stage. It's so much more than that. So the Cliff Notes is like this transition time from having, I'll keep it in this context of like having menstrual cycles, periods, and like to the phase of life where we no longer have menstrual cycles. So it's that transition time from cycles to non cycles and everything that happens in between. It's just that it's so much more than not having periods anymore. And so that's what we now appreciate so much more. And we'll talk on the role in which nutrition can play and how we manage that transition.
Awesome. That was good. That was good.
I try not to insert my uh, cultural, societal.
I know. There's a lot there, which I'm sure we will touch on. But I know. So we had a bunch of questions that came in from folks who pre-registered for the clinic, and we do have that list. But Dina's probably gonna knock out a bunch of them in the presentation that she has. So we're gonna do that first, and then we can hit up any of the questions that weren't addressed. And if you're watching live, you're welcome to comment. We'll be able to see that, and we can pop those questions in afterwards. So. Uh, Dina, are you good for me to switch it to that screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm going to flip it.
All right. We will do that. And then let's do this. Got it? Okay. Um, yeah, well, let's dive in a little bit more here about like what perimenopause is. Again, I mean, I think some people think, oh, that's for old women, or like, I don't even know what the word means. But you can think of peri as just like this time frame around menopause where we're um, either still having menstrual cycles, but they're becoming less consistent, less, regular. If we're taking oral contraceptive or we're on the pill or we're not having periods because we've used an oral contraceptive, you may not even know that this phase is happening to you because you don't have periods. But this visual here that you're seeing is a simple diagram to just try to show the change in hormone states once we go from like, oh, I used to have whatever 30-day cycles. Now they're all over the place. Um, Eventually, when I'm in menopause years or postmenopause, depending how we phrase it, our hormone levels change. And we don't have to go into all of these details, but I just wanted to visually show, like if you look at the middle part of this kind of graphic, hormone flux is kind of the nice way of saying like, oh my God, my hormones are all over the map. What happens here, and we'll show on the next slide, like it's so different for each woman. How do you know you're in perimenopause without having your hormone levels tested? So I just wanted to show this kind of for the visual on the couple different hormones we usually talk about when we're addressing menopause, perimenopause. Is that good so far, Kim? Okay. I'm kind of orienting to my screen here. So, are you in perimenopause? Well, um, there are, depending what source you reference, somewhere between like 34 and 62 or something like that, signs or symptoms of perimenopause. And if you just glance at a couple of these, uh, I mean, it's all over the place. But again, this is what I'm trying to get at here is the individual experience of each woman's perimenopause. It can look very, depressing here, like, oh my gosh, this is a whole set of symptoms and signs I care not to have. But it's not to say that you will experience all of these things. Some women kind of cruise through this transition phase in life, having minimal impact on their daily living, whereas others feel some of these signs and symptoms more severely or more frequently. I think I wanted to make the point here, Kim, that if someone here listening now or in the future is like, I've noticed changes and you just kind of want to brush it off, or like, oh, I'm just having a bad day, or someone got under my skin, to take it seriously because some of these symptoms certainly can be addressed through hormone therapy, through nutrition, through other kinds of therapy. So you don't have to suffer, is what I wanted to say. Like you don't have to have a miserable 5 years of life. It can take some time to work through some of these signs and symptoms. And again, it's not to say that everyone will experience all of these things. I'll just say personally, the one that was most surprising to me, I'm trying to find it on this list. Um, change in body odor. So I forget what age I was, but I was like, what is going on? Like I'd come back from a run and I was so weirdly stinky. Like I put my deodorant on and all this stuff. And I was like, what the heck is happening? Like what is going on? And it was a phase that lasted maybe one summer of my life, but it was gnarly. And no deodorant helped. Like it was just one of those things. So like it lasted a little while and it was irritating, but it went away. And I'm guessing all of us know someone who's had some, set of these symptoms, worse or better. I'd love to say it goes away quickly. Again, it's so different for each person. We're going to talk nutritionally, some things that can help these symptoms. If you are, more or less active. Some of these things can be enhanced. Um, so I can address some of that separately. But the last point on this slide is that some of these symptoms can occur if we're also under fueling or maybe overtraining, depending how you want to look at that. So we need to be careful about discounting what it is we are experiencing. Yes, unfortunately, great question. Um, yes, depending on the practitioner. Some of us are used to also just like not advocating for ourselves. We don't know how to do that, or our medical system just doesn't enable that space. So, not being heard by our doctors is still something that we're working through as a society and in the medical fields. But I would say if you are not being heard, or it's like, oh, you're just getting old, deal with it, like that is not acceptable any any longer. I know, unfortunately, it may take another doctor, or like you gotta ask your friend who they're working with. Um, a couple other things here. So perimenopause doesn't start at the same age for everyone. Typically, as you can see here in the first bullet point, it's around age, 40 to 48 is when things start to change, but that's an 8-year range. Some women start to feel it in their late 30s. There's also medically induced menopause, like if you have a hysterectomy or some things go on where you have, your ovaries and uterus removed, that can induce menopause right away. But typically, we're looking in our 40s when this stuff starts happening. Um, the other wild thing here, Kim, is this duration of time before we reach menopause, which menopause you can kind of think of as like my body's, done with periods. We're kind of in that other phase now where hormone levels have kind of flatlined. We don't have that woo up and down of everything. So that duration of time to get to the other side or this next phase of life can be quite long for some people. Um, I already mentioned that the symptoms can be all over the map. So it is super individual. However, we do have influence on some of these symptoms, looking at nutrition being one of those things. Uh, I would say one thing all of us can do is just, keeping a log, a journal, tracking somehow. If you aren't on oral contraceptive and you have natural menstrual cycles, like just keeping a journal of what's going on, because that can be one of your first indicators, like things are starting to shift. That could be your cycle length. That could be length of time that we're having our period. It could be blood flow, like what's happening, and just making a couple notes. There's tons of great apps these days that can help guide you through that if you don't want to do old fashioned journal. Other metrics can be helpful, just as, like looking at heart rates or HRV. Some of the other, metrics that the gizmos track, either on your smart phone or your watch or your Aura ring, things like that. It's just data to help validate what's going on besides your symptoms that you experience, is like, oh wow, this is happening, and I'm just tying everything together. It can be helpful when we're working with a physician as well, just to kind of advocate for ourselves. Um, Lastly, I just want to make a quick note, even though we won't talk about it too much here, is just hormone therapy, or sometimes called menopause hormone therapy. Um, that this can be a treatment to help manage some of those symptoms. So, if again, your quality of life is starting to be severely affected, or you just can't sleep, or you can't think straight, we don't need a whole list of like 10 million, you know, devastating symptoms to start hormone therapy. It can be enough, just like I can't sleep, which some of us can relate to pretty easily. So your doctor or having a good physician or OBGYN to help you talk through these things and test it out, so it can be a nice complement to some of the other things in life. This is a fuzzy visual, and I snatched it. I forgot to put the where I snatched it from. It's from an old Wall Street Journal article. But this was a visual that the illustrator put together in terms of like what's happening generally to my body as I go through perimenopause into this menopause phase of life. And a little bit of this you can see here. If you can read it, Kim, is kind of put in the athlete lens or the active person lens, is like, man, I'm starting to slow down. My run pace or my hiking efforts kind of feel like sluggish. Or some days I have no energy, or I don't even feel like it. Like my pep and my mojo has tanked. Um, my heat tolerance, like when it's hot out, I cannot be out in the heat, that kind of thing. This is all a reflection of that estrogen and progesterone hormone levels changing or being in that kind of erratic state. Um, we have estrogen receptors all over the body, not just in the womb or in the ovaries. We have estrogen receptors all over. And so when those hormone levels start to change, we experience, as you can see, some serious changes to more than just menstrual cycle. So this is not, again, to be doom and gloom. It's more uh, kind of a different way to motivate us to understand what's happening and then figure out lifestyle, nutrition, exercise, therapy tools to help work with these changes. So any questions yet, Kim, before I go into some nutrition stuff? Okay, carry on. So I wanted to go through 7 or 8 things here nutritionally. Some I'll try and weave in some of the questions that were asked as well. Um, a couple of the questions related to like fueling and, what do I do if I'm in this phase? I'm kind of paraphrasing. Do I need that much protein? That kind of stuff. So, one of the first things I'll say from a nutrition angle, assuming most of us listening are active, no matter if you're a runner, ultra runner, or a 5Ker, or a hiker, or you do other sports. But if you're active, one of the things we want to be careful of in perimenopause is making sure we're not in a low energy availability state. What this simply means is we need to eat enough so that our bodies can operate optimally, meaning I need my digestion to work. I need to be able to breathe. I need to be able to think. So if we're not eating enough, these organ systems start to get affected on top of trying to keep up with our energy burn that we're experiencing through the exercise we do. So we don't want to get in this under fueling state day to day to day. Our bodies are different than the male counterpart body. So once we are in a mode where we may be under fueling ourselves chronically day to day, that under fueling state can make some of those symptoms that we saw worse. Um, we can experience things like body composition change, like we're going to not be able to hold on to our muscle as easily. Our fatigue level can increase. We might have more mood swings. I mean, if you just think simply, like we need energy into the body so that we can be productive in life. And so if we don't have that, a whole host of systems in the body can be affected. So I wanted to bring this up. I mean, I'm not giving numbers here, like how many calories to eat. All that stuff is something you should work with, a healthcare practitioner on or a dietitian to figure out what's right for you. But it's one of the more common issues these days because a lot of us just love to do our exercise and forget to eat, or we don't feel like eating. Whatever the reasons, this can happen intentionally or unintentionally. So it's not great uh, in this perimenopause timeframe, but I would argue not great ever. Uh, unless we're dealing with some other medical condition where we really have to be, focused on nutrition intake for other reasons. So avoiding low energy availability, a couple tips here to keep in mind is your meal timing. It's just like, when are you eating in the awake hours that you have? So generally like a meal every 3 to 4.5 hours. We might put a snack in there. That's dependent on, many things, but I would just say generally your main meals is not to skip for long periods of time. For us active women, especially in perimenopause, again, those symptoms can be exacerbated if we're eating too little or not eating enough of the right kinds of foods. So we want to be careful to avoid restrictive diets, low calorie diets. A lot of fasted exercise can be harmful for us. So for training for the wild goose or any of the, Sasquatch races that are, let's say, um, warranting you to train for them, right? If you're doing any kind of purposeful training or daily exercise, we just want to, honor that and nourish the body. I'll give a few more specifics here coming up. So the point here is we're going to get a whole lot more out of our bodies if we're fueling them. And that perimenopause phase will be better managed, generally speaking, if we're not trying to add on this other stress with not eating enough. Another tip with my silly, silly diagram here, I did not use AI, and I should have maybe to help generate a better image. But I wanted to mention something that ties to what we were just talking about is like, when are you eating during your everyday? I'm not even talking about what you're eating right now. But some of us just start our day, we're so freaking busy. We get caught up in work or family, or we're running, we're doing exercise. We don't eat much in the day. And then we are eating more at nighttime. So that's great to eat, period. But it'd be better here on kind of the right side of the screen is just like evening out your food intake instead of eat tiny, tiny amounts and then, hit the town at night. So better for our blood sugar control, our energy, those perimenopause, some of those symptoms is just like eat every 3 to 4 hours and you're going to feel better, generally speaking. Okay. Thank you for the reminder. Yeah. So this screen and this visual is basically showing two graphs. One where if you think about your, let's say we wake up at 6 a.m. and go to bed at 10 p.m., the graph on the left is just showing like a linear line that goes from, I was going to talk x axis and y axis, but I won't do that. Basically, your intake of food is low from the earlier parts of the day and goes dramatically up at night. In contrast, on the right side of the screen is a more steady line throughout the day. So that's to represent that we're eating every 3 to 5 hours or 3 to 4 hours and not waiting to eat a very large meal at the end of the day. Cool, cool. Let's go over some things. So protein comes up a lot, and depending on, who and what you follow, what you read, protein's all the rage these days for women, especially active women. And then in this menopause phase, protein comes up a ton. I am a supporter of higher protein intake because um, it supports our bone health. I'm going to use some general terms here. Um, I still haven't met someone who's like, yeah, I want to be 80 and not be able to, pick up my coffee cup, and I want to break my bones when I'm 80. Usually everyone wants to be as strong as we can throughout our lifetime. Protein in our everyday nutrition can support us maintaining our muscle mass. Without much protein, it's just harder to have that maintenance of the muscle and the strength that we all usually want to keep going through the lifetime. Protein in our daily nutrition is also important just to work with the aging process. There's a whole area of study related to anabolic resistance. So like if you're trying to build muscle or keep muscle as you age, let's say you're over, the age of 40, there's a change here related just our aging process. But it's compounded a bit here with the perimenopause transition for various reasons. So all of that to just try and encourage all of us to take some time and check out our protein intake. It can do wonders for the short term and the long term. How can we do that? Well, just some tangibles here is to, consider using a tracking app or some sort of food journal tool to calculate, like, how much protein are you really consuming? What's your average? This gets numbers heavy, so you might want to work with a dietitian to kind of crunch through that and have some guidance there. But you don't know until you calculate it. So taking some time, and there's really, you don't have to wait till you're 45 to look at your protein intake. We can start this in our 30s or in our 20s, and it will serve you well going forward. All protein counts. So if you are vegan, your protein sources of beans and tofu and nuts and seeds, all that stuff counts. If you're an animal, fish consumer, all those proteins count. It's nice to get a mix of all the proteins. But again, ultimately, it's just seeing how much are you getting? When are those proteins coming in? For those listening, I have a couple other bullet points. It's just, again, expressing the benefit here of like trying to even out protein intake. Again, instead of like none at morning time and just teeny bits at lunch and then a huge protein dinner, most of us feel better and manage our energy better and focus with distribution of whatever proteins you eat throughout the day. I put a number here because I know I always get asked, like, what do you think? How much protein should I have? And one of the questions someone asked was like, do I really need that much protein? course, I don't know what that person was referencing in terms of an amount, but I will say if you take your body weight or your approximate body weight in pounds and multiply it, use your calculator or multiply however you want, zero point 0.8 times your body weight to upwards of 1.2 grams of protein times your body weight. That gives you a working range. And then, again, if that ends up being a pretty big range, like that's 100 grams to 180 grams, holy smokes, I don't know what to do with that. Again, see how much you're averaging. Where do you fall in that range? And then, depending on what we're trying to make better for you, if it's energy or your recovery from workouts, or we're working on body composition, or we're just trying to help bones, we work within that range. Honestly, that could be a whole other talk, but I just wanted to present a range and encourage everyone to check on their protein intake. And then if you're still confused, again, there's a lot of resources online, or working with someone can save you a lot of time to help figure out what's best for you and how to improve your protein intake. You certainly don't need to go from 0 to 10 overnight, because your digestion may revolt. So you want to inch it up slowly if you are seeing that you need to consume more protein. So along with that, I would just say, what proteins are you eating? I a minute ago said it all counts. I would then add my next step, but um, like a lot of overly processed, ultra processed food reliance may not be the best for you. So I'm not trying to pick on any kind of foods, but this kind of goes to that, like whole foods, generally speaking, are better than the ultra processed. So if you think of like a lot of the foods in the frozen section that have been um, synthesized, manufactured, those things are fine, but we want to make sure we've got a variety of proteins. So if you eat animal foods, things like eggs, yogurt, chicken, salmon, sardines, that kind of stuff is awesome. If you're plant-based, we have a ton of plant proteins that aren't highly processed either. So picking and choosing based on your preferences. Beans are excellent. Soy foods are excellent. We have tons of nuts and seeds to choose from. And protein powders can be an option as well for those of us, especially who are active. So, Kim, I'll let you, because I know you have the questions as well, if there's some other specifics there. Maybe after this point number 5 on protein, and then I have like a couple others. You can let me know. I was just wanting to add, because there's confusion, like, do I really need protein after my workouts? So it depends what you are calling a workout. I would say for strength work you're doing in the gym, if you're doing, a boot camp class, if you're doing a long endurance day, you're out on the trail for, hour and a half to 2 hours to 6 hours, 8 hours, that kind of stuff, where you're really breaking down muscle tissue. If you're a person who does a morning workout and then sometimes does soccer game at night, or you've got some other kind of thing going on, I would push the protein to be more soon after you complete that workout. There is a set of messaging out there from the research, like so long as you get your daily protein, it doesn't matter. The problem with the message is it doesn't matter for muscle repair, but it does impact your energy, mood, a lot of the things that were on that one slide that gave all these crazy perimenopause symptoms. So protein so much more than just repairing muscle that's been broken down. And so that's why I want to convey here is that the protein post workout is more than just repairing muscle. It's got a lot of other benefits. So just general guidance here, you don't have to do like 100 grams of protein right away or do these mega protein shakes. It might be like a 25-gram hit of some kind of protein, which you can get in yogurt, cottage cheese, chicken, a whole bunch of other foods. We could use a protein powder, maybe upwards of 35, 40 grams in that window of time following a workout. There's a lot of options. Again, some of this depends on what your situation is, but I would say most times people report feeling better and they recover better when they put that protein closer in to finishing their workout versus waiting. Um, I don't want to exclude carbohydrate here. So your fruits, your grains. Um, I mean, again, depending on if you're, monitoring some of the other symptoms, uh, and trying to work with complaints that you might have, the choice of carbohydrate that we eat. You can think a donut, Pop Tart, or we could think, banana and, some of the other foods that might not be as sugar laden or processed or whatever. So those are all choices that we make, some of which may or may not help us. So I might pause here, Kim, just to check on time. I had like one or two other points here, but I can pause and do some questions and stop the share or roll through the next couple. Yes. Yeah, I know. Yes. Yeah, I would say, so yeah, a couple of these cravings, I would definitely look at your protein intake. Instead of like, stop eating the sugar, it's more like, well, what can I do from a positive lens that might affect my sugar cravings without like, ugh, shoot, why getting all, stressed out about the sugar craving is actually look at what you might be missing. So I would look at the protein and protein timing for that, which also ties to the person who mentioned weight gain and stress. Look at your protein intake. And um, there was a question similarly, Kim, like specific foods or nutrients to help with endurance, strength, and recovery. Of course, I'm not trying to ignore carbs. That's on my next. I have, a couple more here. Uh, so we'll talk on carbs here in just a second. And then there was a question about, coffee fueled workouts. Can I? Yeah, I would say here a comment on that is it depends on the workout you're doing in the morning. If it's kind of mellowish and you're in good health, you are not dealing like if everything's working for you, okay, maybe you keep just coffee and you go do your workout. But if you're having complaints, if you're not feeling awesome, then I would vote for let's put a little bit of nutrition before your early morning workout or your morning workout. You can keep the coffee, but let's add a couple hundred calories. And I've got a note here for those listening that might be, a piece of fruit with, um, some yogurt. If you're not a yogurt eater, pick some other kind of protein that you can do. And that might be like a cup of soy milk. Maybe it's a shake that we make. It does not have to be a huge meal at all. I think the thing I would just add here before the next comment, the next section is, um, if you are being affected by perimenopause and just feel sluggish, you feel like your body composition, like you just feel weak or you're just slow to move, you don't have much energy. Um, I would then add to pause on chronic, repeated fasted workouts and start put some nutrition in and see what that does for you. I'll make a note here about carbs because this ties to a couple other things. Um, Body aches, joint pain. What should I eat and fuel with? In the daily nutrition lens, we don't want to cut our carbs out or cut them so low. We still need carb foods, and I'm talking everything from fruits to your toast or your rice or your potato, whatever your carbs are that you've got. We don't want to cut them too low because in this perimenopause phase, again, we can have energy lulls more often, more fatigue. Our digestion can take a hit. And so if we're cutting out a whole bunch of fiber, or we stop eating this important food, set of foods, we can actually worsen some of what happens in perimenopause. So everyday nutrition, again, just taking a look at what carbs do you eat. Some people don't know that vegetables actually have carbs. But for the active person that you are, you definitely want to look at how you're fueling your workouts. Kim, there was a question about like foods to eat based on maybe your cycle, something to that nature. And I would say don't necessarily think like that. Just try out some things and see how you feel. We don't want our menstrual cycle phase to necessarily dictate what it is we eat. But if you're sluggish, maybe you just need a little bit more, or you need to look at your hydration. So, fueling during our training, we don't want to stop doing that. If you're hesitant or something's not working digestively, then we can look at that and figure out, is that a food source that's causing a problem because we're, more in this perimenopause phase, or we're having more constipation, something else in our day-to-day nutrition needs to be addressed. But generally speaking, I would just vote for really looking at the array of types of carbohydrates that you have on a daily basis: fruits, veg, your grains, nuts, seeds, what kind of veg, and so on, and look to see if there's some opportunity there. Again, it's just to help get the nutrients you need to make the transition a little less maybe impactful on a negative way, and help inflammation and some of these other things that can occur. So the last word, yeah, it's because there were a few questions on supplements. And I won't do a lecture here like, why are you using supplements or why are you thinking about it? I definitely have implemented use of supplements in perimenopause with certain athletes. It's just important to know these days there's so many menopause marketed supplements that are overpriced, unnecessary, ineffective. So I just want everyone to be cautious, like with the snazzy marketing or the person you're seeing that's marketing it. Is just take a pause and uh, work with someone to figure out what you might need. But a lot of times we can do some things through your daily eating, maybe hormone therapy. More isn't better with the supplements in many cases. So I'll just say generally the 3 or 4 supplements that can be helpful in perimenopause would be magnesium, omega-3, uh, creatine monohydrate can be helpful, especially if you are active and lifting, and then vitamin D. Those would be like in my top 4. There are other supplements that can help with sleep. Um, Rhodiola and ashwagandha can be helpful. But again, I wouldn't go start all 6 of these supplements at max dose because you can actually experience some negatives and waste some money as well. So I know, so true. Yeah, I'll be more firm here. I have seen cases where when you like ignite the fire here with like, oh yay, I just started these 6 supplements, or you start one but you max out. You don't even have to max the dose, but let's just say you're adding on supplements that are brand new to you. It's kind of like going from, oh, I'm running 5 miles a week, and then the next week is like 100 miles. Like that is a huge shock on the body. It is not recommended. It's probably going to backfire, and you can get the opposite result that you're seeking. So I have seen cases where people feel more anxiety, um, bowel issues, like now I'm more tired, I don't understand, or there's some other complaints like that that came from over supplementing or picking a supplement that was cheap. So I don't know if that was a little bit more firm and direct, but I would really, yeah, be cautious about what you're buying, what you're taking. And honestly, a consultation or 2 with a dietitian can end up saving you so much more money in the long run, to find out like what you need based on who you are, what you're trying to achieve, and what symptoms you have. So, um, maybe I'll pause there and we have a couple minutes. Kim, if you want to do a few other questions, I'll stop sharing screen.
Awesome. Well, that was excellent, Dina. That was really thorough. I appreciate you, especially in it like implementing the questions that came in. I think that was really helpful to work through them with your slides there.
Well, thank you. I know it can feel like a lot, but I mean, if you or the listener remembers one thing, like nutrition's one piece of our women's journey. There's so much though. Like we can affect a lot through how we nourish our bodies, how we feed. Not like a cow analogy or anything, but it can make a difference, just like the pelvic floor or the therapies that we pursue, the kind of sleep that we get. So there's a lot here that can help this perimenopause phase of life not be doom and gloom or the worst thing ever.
Dina, I'm curious. I'm going to throw a question at you. What is one myth about perimenopause you wish you could erase from the universe? You could take it from the angle of nutrition or just in general. Is there something that you've seen, maybe messaging that's been, um, amplified that's not accurate, or what? Take that
Yeah,
as you will.
I know there's a lot I could pick from. I think it is kind of what I might have just mentioned, but said differently, is like menopause sucks. And I think that is a myth. It actually can be such, and I know there might be people rolling their eyes like, what the hell? Excuse my language. But it actually can be a very opportunistic time to learn more about your bodies. It does not mean that it's going to be the worst ever for you or the worst part of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask another question. I'm assuming, you've been doing nutrition for a long time. Maybe immediately you weren't focused entirely on, well, you're not focused entirely on perimenopause now, but you're working with a lot more clients that are going through that stage. I'm curious, like, how has that impacted the work that you do? Like, are there any impacts from working in the perimenopause space? Like, if it's impacted you professionally or personally? I'm just curious with that because you work with a lot of people over the years. So just
Yeah.
wondering.
Let's see. I think of I think of longevity of women in sport because I am in the 50 plus age group and I want to be active when I'm 70, 80, older. And because especially in running in that sport, you see a lot more, even though we have a long ways to go, but you see more older women in the sport. And I think now that we understand much more about like menopause and the aging process, we can support women better to either join sport later in life or stay in sport. Um, so that's something I think about and something I'm more passionate about. And it's such a treat to see women like the 70-year-olds
Yeah,
kicking butt out
I
there,
love
like
that.
instead
Yeah,
of like, oh shoot, I'm too old or I'm too frail or I don't know that I'm capable, is like using health, nutrition, the training and all that stuff to keep us going for a long time instead of being thrown under the rug.
totally. Yeah, I know I shouldn't have favorites, and I could probably say every group is my favorite in Sasquatch, but I love the Elder Squatch crowd. Like, one of my favorite times in races is, towards the end when you're getting close to the end of the event. I'm thinking about Wild Goose. When we have some of the older folks come out because it is such a long cutoff time. But I just love it. I love it because I want to do that when I'm older. It's inspiring to me to see, all genders out there kicking ass. But it's
Totally.
it's it's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, you hit it right there. Yeah. I just felt a little goosebump.
Yeah, it's so great. I
Yeah.
love it. And they also, like, I'm stereotyping, but are always dropping awesome wisdom, like just great wisdom on the trail when you get to share some miles with
Yeah,
older folks.
for sure. Yeah. I totally agree. And so I think that's great for all of us to be thinking about. And it's hard when you're in your 30s, 20s, 30s to think about being 60, 70. But I mean, it's legit when you get, especially as women in 40s and 50s, like it can hit harder. And again, I think this is a way to just like embody and like, oh yeah, own it, own aging and really then help the younger generations to continue to foster that so that we can break through some of the past societal cultural issues here in this country in particular.
Yeah, why do you think it's been so hard for our culture to talk about perimenopause? And go.
And we're done. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean that we could mention the P word, patriarchy. I think it does go back a few hundred years. Oh, maybe longer. There's a lot to that. I'm sure there are other resources that could speak more eloquently to the reasons.
Let
But the
me let me let me reframe. I'll reframe the question. I'll
thanks.
reframe the question. What have you seen? What ways have you seen the conversation shift, like in a very positive way? Like, because you're on the front lines here, so I'm thinking too. Like, what are some ways that we can shift the conversation to make it more everyday, not taboo, no stigma around it?
Well, I mean, you are doing it by having this webinar. You in the Sasquatch trail running group, like having women's products at the races, like some of that is just normalizing bodies, you know what I mean? And um, I think the channels and at races or at the other gatherings that you have or other people may have at their respective clubs and things is like just being able to talk about it and normalize instead of be scared to mention like shoot, I have this hot flush right now, sorry I'm sweating and it's like 40 degrees out, or like you don't need to be sorry, but just letting people express and have those conversations, I think, is the greatest starting point.
Yeah, totally. Um, somewhat related, but we had a runner come to Wild Goose, and I'm forgetting who it was, but if you're listening, you know who you are. I think they were in the healthcare space, but they had like 100 of those stand up pee contraptions,
Oh yeah.
and she said, "I want you to give these away as swag items." I was like, "Hell yeah!" So this last race in October, we put them out at the swag table, and we had a couple of folks take them, and they actually used them at the race. So came back, we got a full report on how it worked. So that
Nice.
that was very cool, and you know what? It got me to think outside the box too. I mean, that probably wasn't on my list of like let's give out that as a swag item, but I'm all about functional, useful products as giveaways. So that was pretty cool to see that.
That's awesome. It just reminds me quickly here too of like the apparel and footwear
Mm,
movement, like designing clothing for cooling differently, or like, how women sweat a little bit differently than men. And so, like, oh, wow, and then we have different structure of feet and like the heel and the foot, all this stuff that I don't quite understand. But like, that's another example of honoring differences, maybe not totally related to menopause, but like just the different needs that we might have to help us thrive.
hmm
So that was a little bit of a tangent, but yeah.
Well, this has been great, Dina. I appreciate the conversation. I definitely want to make sure you've got a few minutes to talk about the work you do specifically, so if people want to reach out and work with you. I know you were sharing with me the other day on some of the different programs. There's a couple new things that have popped up, so maybe if you could walk us through like what does coaching look like with you, the programs you have, and then also your podcast. Make sure you mention your podcast.
Oh, thank you, Kim. Yeah. Oh, podcast. I have a colleague, dish, what? Sport dietitian colleague that I host or co-host a podcast with. It's mostly sports nutrition talk, but so it's not just like for practitioners, it's for anyone who's active or athletic or just interested in nutrition. And the very clever name of that pod is Inside Sports Nutrition. Uh,
It's a
so
great name. Great
we
name.
put out weekly podcasts. And then as far as services, I mean, I'm biased, right? But I think all of us can benefit from having a nutrition once over at least, just like a lot of us have coaches or we have massage people or we have a physical therapist or a therapist, is having a dietitian in your corner who you can meet with here and there or specific periods of time to work through a health issue, to work through maybe it's performance related or training related. It could be simply to ask questions and like, I want to do a review of these supplements because I'm not sure I need them. And so we offer single sessions, and then we have more monthly based coaching, similar to working with a coach, where you can work, 2 to 3, 4 months or pop in and out over years of time. And then we have a couple programs, Kim, a more advanced, integrated mindset, mental skills coaching with nutrition coaching. That's called Elevate. There's a link on the website for that if you want to check it out. But it's two coaches with you to work through, um, again, including some mindset and mental strategies that really can help, transform whatever it is that we're working on. And then there's a strength and nutrition program that's going to be a DIY program that's coming out in the next few weeks, called Thrive DIY. So that's blending strength training program and nutrition education with an exercise plan that you get as well. And then, yeah, I mean, if you're in Colorado or come to Colorado, I do some testing services here as well that can be really helpful to learn more about body and how to structure or restructure nutrition.
Awesome. Dina, this is fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us tonight.
Thank you for everything, Kim, and all that you do for all of us out here. Appreciate it. And I hope I get to meet more of the Sasquatch community in 2026 and the years ahead.
Yes. Yes. I know. We got to get you back out to a trail party.
Yes, must.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in tonight, whether you're watching live or you're catching the replay on YouTube or our podcast. We appreciate you tuning in. And if you want to learn more about us, you can visit our website, which is sasquattrailrunning.com. And Dina's website, I think you've already said it, but maybe mention it one more time for everybody.
Oh, yeah, nutritionmechanic.com.
Perfect. Okay. All right, y'all. Appreciate you tuning in. And till we see you again, keep it squatchy.